Watch the ride.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Metalworks. A couple of things I need to say straight off. Firstly, apologies about the sound of tree massacre going on. There's someone chainsawing nearby and I can't really do anything about that, but hopefully it's not too bad. And the second thing is just to say thank you to anyone who does watch these videos. I understand that, you know, in my channel these are a niche video, but I believe that they will grow to have their own audience. So anyone who's watching these and enjoying them, leaving a comment, leaving a like, sharing it with some friends, supporting the channel, any of those things are massively more important on these videos, because at the moment we are a small minority on my own channel who enjoy these videos. Anyway, getting on with what I wanted to get on with. So as you know, if you've been watching, this is the base of the big clock and I wanted to get on with this. I've been waiting on some bolts to arrive to bolt these two parts together. I'll explain why I can't just go to a hardware store and get those in a minute. But I ordered 30s and got 25s. These things happen, the 30s are in the post, but it has delayed things by a couple of days. But it's okay because I've got other things I can get on with. The hardware that I use, and this is why I can't just go down the local shop and buy some, is because what I use is basically A2 stainless steel nuts and bolts. So these are marine grade as I understand it. I choose A2 even though it's more expensive because it just looks nicer, it's a higher quality. And the colour of it, it's a silver, not like a blue silver that you get with the cheap stuff you buy from the hardware store. You'll also notice that I almost exclusively use dome-headed Allen bolts because I think they look nicer than hexes unless it needs a hex bolt. And I couldn't decide for the big clock whether I was going to go with hexes or not, and I looked at it, put one in each hole and was like, no, go for the domes. But the same, waiting on for the right length ones now. This stuff is really expensive to buy if you go to like a marine supply place, because that's where they tend to have nuts and bolts like this. But the place that I go to, not only do they charge me about 4 times as much as what I can get on Amazon, they just don't have the selection and they don't do any dome-headed stuff. So this all comes from Amazon, and that's why when I order something and it's late, it causes a problem. But as I say, no matter, because today we need to do some aluminium brushing. This is the face for the big clock. I just need to fit this up on here to make sure it's all in line, and if it is, then I can take one of the sides off, and I'm going to be doing the brushing on that and then probably lacquering it. Well, I will be lacquering it. Aluminium brushing for me is a little bit stressful because it can go right and it can go wrong. And if it goes wrong in a bad way, you either have to change your design entirely or restart. And it's so easy for it to go wrong. But anyway, let's just get this fitted up. I have asked on my Instagram for some questions, so let's see if I've got any. My Metalworks Instagram is Spicy110 Metalworks, as you can see here. Okay, I've got 4 comments. The first one comes from Ferroworks. Bacon, brown sauce or red? Oh, come on. Red. Chili sauce, actually, if I'm going to be honest. I like bacon and chili. Bernie13, you're nuts. Grim Squeaker, do you bolt anything together? And with that, do you have to tap threads, etc.? Well, yes, I do have to bolt things together, like I'm about to do now. The face plates all get bolted on, and obviously other bits and pieces get bolted together, but I tend to use existing holes. If there aren't existing holes, then I will tend to weld it. In the case of the big clock, interestingly, the threads on that are weird. I think they might be Imperial, because it's like an M9, and an M9 doesn't really exist, so it's very weird, and I couldn't find a bolt to fit that, so that's why I've gone with M8, and they'll be hidden inside, and it'll be fine. So no thread cutting yet, no, but I have looked into it quite a lot, because it may come up one day. One of the main reasons for that, though, I think, is because I don't have a drill press, and obviously drilling straight holes that you're then going to tap by hand is just a little bit futile. What am I doing? I'm doing this wrong, aren't I? Which side am I going to go with? I like these round bits, they look nice, and there's only a little bit of paint wear on the front. Where I was talking about before about whether I was going to fix this or not, and I just feel like it should be left. I don't know why, I might change my mind afterwards. See, that side is a lot cleaner. There's no reason I can't mount it on the other side. Maybe I should just do that. Cleaner on the edge as well. All right, we're gonna change plan here. It was the right way then. And Grim Squeaker again. Do you just use metric threads? Basically, everything that you get in the UK now is metric. Yeah, you can still get Imperial stuff, but we just use metric. It makes more sense. Even the Americans are starting to realise this. Demolition Ranch made a video about this a little while ago. Was it Demolition Ranch or was it Off the Ranch? And he just said basically, he was like, I admit it, the Imperial system is just stupid. I'm probably going to give this a quick spin on the grinding wheel just to bring it in very slightly, because I can just see it through the edge of a couple of bits, but that should be great. So grim, no, I just use metric because that's all I can really buy, so all my tools are in, just makes sense that way. Oh yes, that's right, more of this. Right, well that seems to be close enough to be getting on, so just get back out, there we go. Now I was planning to brush this side, but I can feel a couple of aluminium fragments under there, and that could mean it's scratched to bits, in which case the back's going to be far better. I probably should have masking taped both sides before I put that on. Lesson learned. Surprised I haven't had this problem before. It's never really happened, but as soon as you put the camera on and try and film it, sure enough. Oh no, they're wood! They appear to be wood. We might be alright. It's going to naturally have some scratches in it, which is absolutely fine. They just can't be too deep, because then you'd have to sand through them below that layer. Right, because I've ground this, there is a very slight edge around here. You can just hear it. I'm just going to take the Dremel. I probably won't readjust the cameras to do this, but take the Dremel and just take that edge off. Because I don't want to break off any pieces here that then I drag across when I'm sanding, and it will put deeper scratches in it. I basically want the surface that I'm going to be sanding to be as flat as I can possibly have it, with no obstructions and no bits to break off and cause me problems. It still will be though, probably. It always happens. Okay, so I've done that, just quickly taken that edge off and flatten these down as best I can. Now I need to just stick this down onto this backing card. The reason why I use card as a backing is because if you use a hard backing and you have a slight imperfection in the surface, it will transfer through to the top of the metal. You wouldn't believe it, but it does. So you can actually, in a way, you can get the ridges show through, but normally it's not a problem. But having a forgiving surface means that you also get a better contact when you're sanding. It's all about consistency and nothing moving. Kelt, what? That's their name. How do you stop snapping drill bits? Lubrication quality drill bits. As I've already mentioned in this video, I don't actually do a lot of drilling, but yes, quality drill bits help. Sharp drill bits are, you know, kind of important. Otherwise it's just not going to work. Also, if you're drilling a deep hole into metal, for instance, then you're going to want to consider the fact that if you're doing it by hand, your weeble wobbling side to side is what's going to cause the snapping. So if you can use a drill press, that would also help. And yes, lubrication as well, but that depends on the material and the depth and, you know, that sort of thing, how much heat's going to build up. But a little bit of like cutting fluid, yeah, it would help. It all depends on the circumstance, really. You're going to want to make sure that you're feeding the drill bit in at the right rate, so not too hard and not too little. You want it to actually cut its way through the metal. Right, hopefully that will be... No, I want to put a bit more on it. I don't want this to move. James Bruce 7701, how many hours on average do you spend on a clock? That's a little bit tricky to say because I don't make one and then the next one. The way I'm doing this is a bit more normal because I've only got a couple of things on the go at the moment because I'm filming all of this. But normally I'd have maybe 4 or 5 clocks on the go at once. When you take everything into account, apart from, say, doing the pictures, editing those and putting that all online, I'm going to guess about 7 or 8 hours a clock, maybe, something like that. It all adds up because you've got stages that you have to stop, and yeah, that's why I do things in line. So when you've got to wait on a certain thing, you can move on and do another thing. But physical working time, yeah, probably, well, should we say 6 to 8 hours, depending on what it is. Obviously, some of them, there isn't as much, and other ones it can be considerably more. The little R1 clock that I sold the other day, you saw me finishing, that took quite a lot longer than you would imagine, mostly because that central hole where the clock fits into, it wasn't that size. All the R1 clocks that have got the clock that slides in, other than 2 of the 6, all had to be ground out by hand with a Dremel, a couple of mil to get it to seat in. So yeah, it can take a long, long time. Okay, 240 grip. It sounds a little bit high, but it actually does the right thing. A sanding block helps with this. Actually, another thing you can do is you can make a wooden jig for this sort of thing, where you basically have a rail or 2 rails and you put the thing in the middle and you have the sandpaper on a piece of wood and it locks it in, and it means you can only go up and down like that by hand. You can't accidentally skew it. I probably should build one of those one day, but up until now I've done it by hand, and as you've seen, it works out. He says that as he's about to do this, just everything's going to go wrong. I can just see it happening. Get that wrapped around, and then a drawing pin, because this is a cork block. This is great for this. There we go. Now comes the nerve-wracking bit. That was not tearing in the way that I was hoping. Just eating it more than anything. We do need to consider where top and bottom is going to be. So we decided we were going to use that side because it's less chipped. And the holes make a triangle, so we can either go 2 at the top, 1 at the bottom, or we can go 1 at the top. If we go with 2, that's off kilter. If we go with 1, that's between 2, kind of. You may notice, this is one of the things that I've noticed and is interesting, through really paying attention to the geometry of discs and sprockets, is they very often don't match up like you think they would. Sprockets very much, if they're a 4 crossed one, you know, like a central bit of cross of metal and then the actual sprocket on the outside, these normally are slightly staggered off like this, and I think it might be something to do with the load forcing on it. It makes it stronger rather than being straight. I don't know, but they all seem to be like it, and when something's the same throughout, I just start to feel that there is a reason why they do it. But anyway, I think we're going to go with 1 at the top. Just the way that it is, you can't control these things. So, if we're going for 1 at the top, we need to make sure that we stick this down in an orientation that we're just going up and down and up and down. Okay, so let's go for it. Light to start with. I don't know if you can see this. I hope you can. The way you look at it from different angles, you get different light textures, so you need to always look at it from the same angle. But I'm starting to get streaks of a certain sort of texture, and then I've got darker bits. You want to keep going until you get this one consistent texture, as it were. Okay, so the outside is starting to get the brush look, but the inside is staying pretty flat. To me, that says there is a divot in the middle, sort of a bend down. So if I put something round, like a piece of cardboard, if I can get it underneath, but underneath the bit where it's low, it will support it, and it should improve the finish, or at least the speed of doing it. If I can get this in the right place. Now, see how instantly it started cutting in on the middle, where that now is? As I said, this is why it took me 6 months before I wanted to start making videos, so I actually sort of learned some things, because it took me a long time to work some of this stuff out. And I hope you value that, because this isn't just, you know, knowledge you can get out of a book anywhere, because I do things in ways that no one else really does it. Okay, well, it's not quite getting there, so I'm going to go a little bit more aggressive. This is where you need to make sure it's stuck properly, because it will shift. What you're basically doing here, if you imagine it as a side profile that way, is you're putting lots and lots of grooves in the surface of the metal. And the reason it looks good is because obviously these edges reflect light at different angles. So from a certain angle, you'll get the reflection coming off, and from another angle, you get it being lost more, and that's why you get the, you know, the brushed look. And because of that, that's why you want these to be straight lines next to each other. If you get any scratches that go the opposite direction, they're obviously going to stand out a lot better than lots of straight ones next to each other like that. You know, it kind of gets lost, but you get that one sideways one, and it's so obvious. Which is why you've got to be really careful about how you do this. Anyway, more sanding. Lucky. What I basically did there was, rather than making sure that I touched the edge with this part, I caught it on the back. I got a bit cocky. Right. It's still patterning like this, so I'm going to move that piece of cardboard over that way and hope that solves it. Right, we're starting to get there. It's not a lot left now. Now this tip, appreciate this tip, because this saved me so much time and was a revolution when it came to brushing stainless steel. Not stainless steel, aluminium. Little sponge scourers. They are amazing at evening out the tone of it and the finish. And it also helps clean off any debris. But again, you have to do this in the same direction. I am purposely using the same piece of sandpaper, even though this is a little bit duller than it was before, because as it dulls, it should hopefully sort of reduce its grit a bit, and it will help just even things out. Just remember, one mistake even at this point and it's all over if it's deep enough scratch, because if you put a scratch in it, as I was mentioning, imagine you put a scratch, you want all your these to be like that in straight lines, and you put one sideways, you basically, if that sideways one goes to here, you have to wear down through all of this to get to the bottom of it to then reinstate the V's. So you get it wrong and you might as well start again, because it's, oh yeah. You also want to be extremely careful about how you get this back off the cardboard, because you can bend it. One of the easiest things I find is lift the cardboard and bend the cardboard like that. Hold this in the shot and then slowly peel it that way. There we go. And now I need to peel this backing off, and I'll probably put fresh tape on it so I can then lacquer it. So through trial and error, this is how I lacquer stuff, and it seems to work generally. But this is my theory on it. Okay, so first thing, clear lacquer, you know, anything will do really. This one seems to work quite well. Make sure this is warm. You know, you can put it in some warm water to thin it a little bit, or at least just keep it in your hand for a while and give it a good shake. And then the disc itself is being warmed slightly by the light, because when you spray this on, you want it to be thin so it creates a nice film that's flat and even. I'm just using some kitchen roll to take off any dirt, and as long as I keep going in the same lines, it should be fine. Oh, that's another thing, I have to make sure this thing is upright and level. I've also found that one good coat seems to actually give you a clearer finish than multiple thin coats, because as I say, it's going to pool up and create a flat pool of lacquer, and then that will set quite quickly. That's the theory anyway. So yeah, spray away to start with. You don't want that first going on the work, and then just be confident with it. So I can see it's very ripply on the surface at the moment, but the warmth is flattening that out. You don't want to go too hot, because I found that can create bubbles. And you don't want to leave it cooking for too long. I just like it to set and then leave it for a while for it to properly fully cure. Obviously you want to do this in a well ventilated area. I'm about to evacuate the garage while it's setting anyway. Right, it's been a while. I turned the light off after about 5 minutes to let it all cool down and set. But I won't actually do any more with this for about at least 12 hours to make sure it sets properly. But can we see? Hope the lighting's okay. This camera's getting very, very confused by the colour. But yeah, there we go. So the next thing, I'll peel that off now. Just use some masking tape to hold it on so it didn't leave any marks on the back. On the back, if I can keep it this shiny, I will do. And if I can't, I'll buff it over just to give it a flat finish. So I can't fit that to the disc yet because I want that lacquer to set. So in the meantime, I can paint some hands. These, it's a bit hard to tell, but these are all clock hands, differing lengths and varieties because I've used different ones. And I know I've got some very long ones in here somewhere. So I'm just going to spray these with a multi-purpose red spray paint. I've actually tried different methods of this. I've tried priming them, I've tried keying them, sandpaper and all sorts. But because these are silver, when the paint goes over it, you don't just see the paint, you see the background as well. So if you leave them like this, it actually looks a lot flatter and a lot nicer. This spray paint, allowed to cure properly and then lacquered, seems to actually be really strong and good. So I'm happy to do it this way, and it's up to now, it's been absolutely fine. Again, I'm letting the light warm the hands a bit. I've warmed up the spray paint in some warm water. I just stuck the bottom of the can in the water. Not too hot, but just to warm it and thin it a little. Now that may seem like a very thick coat, but I've tried the thin coats method. This works better. Go for one thick coat and let it set, because it pulls and it flattens over the metal and it makes it look really smooth and shiny. It's counterintuitive to the way that I thought spray painting worked, but it works. In this one weird instance, it does work. So that's the last of the paint. I'm now going to leave that under the light for about 5 minutes, let it start to set. The warmth will flatten the paint out, and then turn everything off, all the lights, and let it cool down. And then give it a while, and I should be able to put the lacquer on it, and then I can leave that overnight to set properly, like I am with the faceplate. Okay, so as you can see, the paint's dried. It's a nice, flat, shiny finish. So I'm just going to finish that with a little bit of lacquer. So that's the lacquer done. I'm going to leave that to set for about 10 minutes or so under the light, and then I'll just close everything down for tonight and get on with it tomorrow. So as I say, thank you very much for anyone who watches these videos. Do remember to leave likes and shares and leave a comment and stuff. It really is only going to grow and be supported by the few that watch it. And I know there's a lot more people out there who might be interested, and it'd be good if they get in early, you know, so they can continue along with the story like everyone else. Anyway, catch you next time.
09er, clear for Vector 324.
We have clearance, Clarence.
Roger, Roger. What's our vector, Victor?
Howard radio clearance, over.
That's Clarence, over.
Over. Roger.
Huh?
Roger, over.
What?
Hey! Who?